Shameless squad, I'm just telling you now, do not let them wannabe therapists out there take your money, steal your money in 2026. Y'all are probably like, what is she on? We've been seeing her shorts, all the damn things. Well, I am here to spill the shameless tea and secrets and expose wannabe therapists out there in the world. Why? Because I'm seeing so many people invest in coaching and courses and consulting and it not working when it comes to them for their mental health or their sexual health and wellness that is related to mental health things too. So what up if you are new? I am shamelessly sexy Jackie Boo. I'm a former certified sex therapist. So yes, I got the degree in counseling. I can talk about this shit and I'm staying in my lane, which you may or may not have noticed over the past couple years. There are shit tons of wannabe therapists out there who don't do that. So I've done previous videos on this. I've done previous shorts on this. I've talked about this recently in a live, and I feel like I needed to come back to some notes that I had on my phone. I wrote up a note all the way back in January, another note in March, and then another note this September, November. Wow, a burr month. It's getting cold, so my brain isn't working. Shameless squad. Just kidding. But I felt like, damn, I feel like I'm skimming this subject. I want to go back to it and I want to give you the shameless tea about 10 tips and how to really spot wannabe therapists out there and secrets exposing the helping and self-help guru, teacher, guide industry field. Because I'm not going to lie, shameless squad, it's kind of fucked up how people have been taken advantage of, how coaches have outed their clients, and me too. And that has happened to me. And I've seen it also happen at different events and different groups too, which I will share more about. This is me coming from lived, learned, and heard experience because I have the trifecta of all three. I've worked in the therapy field. I've worked with lived experience and learned with a degree, and also heard experience from different themes and the secrets and psychology that you see with people and individuals that no coach out there is going to get if they have not worked in the field consistently at a master's degree level in counseling or therapy. So what up? If you are new, make sure to subscribe, like, hype this video because we are exposing the secrets here overall. Disclaimer. I am coming with you with my experiences. Now, my intention of this video is not to shame, it is to share here. I know intention does not equal impact. However, I know that a bitch, me, triggers people out there. Legit, I have triggered older people than me. I've triggered other white women therapists in the field. I've triggered older women just in general too. So if I trigger you in this video, a trigger is actually going to be something that increases your mental health symptoms, your anxiety, your PTSD, complex trauma, your stress levels, not just, oh my God, I'm triggered. Like that's pop psychology here, shameless squad. So let's not get it twisted. I invite you to look in the mirror because if I'm triggering you with my shameless tea and secrets and all the damn things, there's something in you that I am just reflecting as a mirror back to you that you have to be able to work on too, boo. So let's not get it twisted. Stay shameless on the channel and everything like that. But I am gonna drop the secrets now. Shameless squad, spill the tea. How to spot wannabe therapists. So one of the biggest things is with the self-help industry being so huge today and everything, I wanted to do this video. And if you think about it, how many books have you ever read by therapists out there? Not celebrities, not self-helpers, not coaches, not consultants, not people who are in different fields that don't even relate to therapy or psychology or mental health here, or literally self-help. That is a therapist. I literally did a Google search on Amazon. Yes, I say Google search on Amazon. That's how we do it. Okay, over here, that's how I say it. And I looked up how many books were actually written by women in the therapy psychology field. Where are the experts? Because they are the experts. Lived, learned, heard, experience, right? If I'm a mechanic, I know nothing about mechanics, right? Like I don't know shit about cars. I'm not going to go and be like, I know all this stuff about cars and all this stuff without, working in that field, learning the information and really dedicating time to mastering my craft at that level. So it's kind of one of those things when I looked up these books on Amazon and I looked for who are the lead top therapist writers, and it's a woman dominated field. I couldn't find anybody, Shameless Squad. I could find maybe 1 to 2 authors when it comes to women in psychology that have gotten their degree, be it they're licensed as a therapist, they're not licensed, or they've moved on. And I only found one other book that I really liked and enjoy, Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die, written by a therapist with a spiritual lens, with the research and all the information connected together. And so, Shameless Squad, I say that with the caveat of when you see different trends, different books, different people who don't have a counseling or therapy degree, don't work in the field of relationships, and they're talking on this stuff, they are not staying in their lane, and people are getting exposed because of that, meaning their masks are falling off. People are becoming smart to this and realizing, like, who the hell are you to say you're an expert in this industry and field when you don't even work in it? You know what I mean? So there's a lot to pay attention to with that, as well as I see tons of therapists being like, oh my God, this self-help book is so amazing. And I'm like, this self-help book is A, not written by a therapist, B, kind of like therapy 101, and C, that makes me like nervous for what the fuck are you and your clients working on, and what have you not worked on, when a lot of these things are pretty general when it comes to therapy. So that also makes me nervous, Shameless Squad. But anyway, I want to really talk about this. I want to share my knowledge. I don't want to shame, and I do want to discuss this because this is a hot topic in regards of how to spot wannabe therapists. So one of them is coaches who write books, theories, or speak random ass phrases into the world for mindset, symbolizing it as gold or brilliant or genius, or even taking from the psychology field, or even taking from other people, specifically Shameless Squad, and like their ideas and then claiming them as their own. Do you realize that if a therapist did that, they would be ripped a new one? Their license would potentially be taken away from them. They would potentially be suspended or, put on some form of probation. If they're in grad school, they would be put on a professional growth plan here, and there would be consequences for these actions. So it's effed up how we glamorize all these self-help wannabe therapists when literally they're like scamming you, like, and saying, I came up with this when you didn't come up with jack shit here, okay? And I also want to say this. I made a post a while ago, and this was earlier this year, Shameless Squad, and this is me spilling some tea. I'd written a post about how coaches need to claim and talk about what theories they are using from psychology. And I researched, and I know the history. Therapy became popular before coaching and had been around for decades longer. And then coaching came along later. It's just a timeline. It's just a history, everything like that, right? And I said, I wish more coaches, for more or less words, I'm paraphrasing, gave attributes to psychology and to the field and talked about what theories they're using, quoted those psychologists, those theorists, or those people whose trainings they go to. Because some coaches out there will be like, oh my God, I'm certified in this, and now I can help you with your trauma through narrative therapy because I did this in one weekend and now I'm a therapist. You're not, bitch. You haven't been in the field for years. And so I wrote that post and I said that coaches wouldn't even be here today if it weren't for therapists and psychology field. I got an older woman troll the F out of me and then say to me, had the audacity and said, and maybe not troll the F out of me, but she literally was like going back and forth with me and was like, I'd be curious to see the research on that. And like, that's the image I had in my mind, that like she pushed up her glasses, she had her nose in the air, don't care, right? And I was like, the audacity. And this motherfucking B, A, you don't know me, B, this is on social media, and C, I'm going to stay shameless and teach you how to treat me. And I said, here's articles, here's history, here's different things. And I said to this person, so many people, in more or less words, who are older than me, want to question me, want to gaslight me, want to age shame me as if they know more than me just because I look young. And just because I look young doesn't mean I'm not fucking wise. And just because you're older does not mean you are wiser. And then this person came back and said, well, I was there with the times, right? And I had said to them, because I had thought about this and paused and wait to respond. Took some time. And I said to them, I know that you were there, and I also have to speak up about this because I don't feel it's right to be able to use your age and that as a privilege to almost put somebody down and make them question or manipulate or control or gaslight them in a situation. That is abuse. And that reason right there is why a lot of therapists leave the fucking field, because there's no protection. Some of us treat each other like shit, and it's hard to find the really good group of people. Some are out there. However, there's so much psychological manipulation and mind games and tactics that we get like worked in the trenches, burnt out so much that it's like, man, by the time you get your license, it's like, was this even worth it? No, for me, I will speak for myself. Other therapists watching this, you'll have to chime in. But anyway, Shameless Squad, that was another thing too, that, there's also people who do therapy and coaching that have the counseling and master's in therapy degree, but you also have to be very mindful of those therapists like coming at other therapists who are actually willing to speak up and out against this shit, like your girl over here. Okay. So tip 1, be mindful of those coaches, books, theories, speak random ass phrases into idea, as well as the ones that write books and they don't give credit to the therapy field, the therapy realm, the research. They don't give credit where it is due and they plagiarize. That is plagiarism. When you literally take someone's words, that's plagiarism right there. You are stealing, you are not creative enough, and just put it in the fucking program. You know what I mean? Put their goddamn name in your book or in the program here specifically, okay? This also is similar to celebrities who study in fields of psychology and then turn TV shows into therapy when that's not confidential at all, Shameless Squad, and that's not ethical. Let me go off on a tangent with this. So many people think, well, oh, this person has their doctorate. Oh, this person has their master's degree, in counseling and social work and psychology and psychiatry, whatever. So they must know mental health, and that's therapy on TV, I swear. And it's like, no, that's unethical. That is a conversation. That is not therapy. You're not supposed to see what happens in people's sessions here. Now, reality TV shows nowadays, like Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, love that show. Real Housewives, love those shows, right? Love my trash reality TV. You know what they probably had to do to actually allow those therapists on the show? That therapist probably had to ask their client to sign a consent form or potentially say, I don't want my face in this, or I want to be blurred out, or no, I don't want to be a part of, this show here just for your therapy session, right? But there probably had to be consent to break confidentiality to have this be on a TV show, okay, Shameless Squad? And so people think that these other shows that are out there that are like talk shows with people with these different masters or doctorate degrees in psychology is therapy, when it's not. You're not seeing what actually therapy is all about here. You're seeing people talk and you're seeing people get held accountable, and that's not always therapy or the work. It's a very old school mindset here that can be embedded into a lot of shame as well. Another piece of this too, with confidentiality with coaches, this is one of my biggest pet peeves here. I have seen coaches literally out people at retreats in front of other people, say like, yeah, I'm this person's coach. I've seen people out people at networking events like, oh yeah, that's my coaching client. Woo! I've seen coaches out people at other community group event outings, and I was outed as a client in a Facebook group across multiple or across within thousands of people there that were present. Where the F is confidentiality when it comes to coaching? I see you as a trained therapist over here, coaching other people in business, coaching other people in life, coaching other people in mindset, coaching other people in whatever it is the fuck you do nowadays, right? And you out that person in front of a group of people or a big room of people or thousands of people. I'm not hiring you as a coach. I don't trust you. You broke confidence by just saying who your client was. Coaches do not get trained as heavily as therapists in ethics, especially confidentiality here. Some will talk about testimonials and getting that, but that would breach confidentiality if they can use it on their websites. Others won't do that, and they'll just be flippant with their energy. And then you want to know another thing that I saw recently too? I've seen a coach literally post on social media And they were talking about how a family member, how they use their service on their child family member. And they were like, but we're going to keep this confidential. Like, I did this service on my, not this service, like this technique on my child here because they asked for it. But we're going to keep that confidential. But it's like, bitch, you just were a hypocrite. Like, you just outed yourself. You can't say, oh my God, I just did this on my child, but we're going to keep it confidential. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, that is like, oh, hang on, y'all. Shameless squad. I got a secret. Oh, wait, I can't tell you. Like, no, y'all would be like, what the fuck, Jackie? Right? So this is something I get so annoyed about and so passionate about. And I'm like, also with the astrologing for the past couple of years, it's like, hello, Pluto is an Aquarius, like technology, social media, talking and speaking and posting before you're thinking and all these damn things here. It's like, do you not realize you are outing yourself here? But people don't believe in astrology, and that's fine, but people pay attention. The people that do are going to be the head of the game with this, boo. So that was another thing that I saw, and I'm just like, why? And then another thing that I think about a lot is like coaches who go to therapy share what their therapist said to them on social media, thinking it'll help their audience who may or may not have the same problems and may not actually apply the steps or do the work because they're not paying for that therapy. I literally see people like, oh, this is what I did in therapy, so now you don't have to pay for this, so I'm going to share this with you because this is what's going to help you. And this has been a coach, and then it puts them as this like God complex hero here. And it's like, if you're sharing everything that you're doing in therapy, like on social media, or if you're sharing tips and tricks and tidbits, like share who that therapist was, / also that's not going to help you with your coaching business when you're just like giving these things away to other people for free. Because they're going to be like, oh, well, I can just use your free content then, because you don't actually value therapists. That is what you're saying to me in that statement here overall, because you don't think other people should be paying for therapy. It's like, oh, I'm going to share this with you because now you don't have to pay for therapy, but you want them to pay you as a coach. What the fuck is that? No, no. And it's just wild to me, Shameless Squad. And it's also like, how would you even know if people have the same issues or problems as you within your audience here? And that's why therapy is not a cookie cutter approach. And a lot of coaches will be like, this is the one thing that will totally help you, blah, blah, blah. Or they might use multiple techniques in different ways and stuff like that. But it's also like, you have to be ready as a coach then for different blockages to come up with your client. A client might be saying like, I want to come to you for subconscious programming here, and I want to read these books, and I want you to help me with these works or whatever. But then if they're at the lowest emotion, because there's different men who talk about emotions, but more so psychiatrists than mental health counselors and therapists, weird, right? That discuss the field of psychology here, but psychiatry, okay, similar, but it's more drugs and medication, just saying. And when you are at that low vibrational energy of like shame and the emotions and the anger and everything, right? It's like, that is something where if you don't have the training in complex trauma or trauma at all, you need to be referring your clients to therapists. If you're a coach, you need to be consulting with a therapist. And I've had coaches ask me about, how do you work on shame? How do you do this? And I'm like, oh, my rate is $375 an hour if you want a client consultation with care. And in the therapy field, we discuss how important consultation is for clients. Why? Because you are going to give them the best care then. And when you are a person who's literally charging tens of thousands, 5 figures of coaching packages, but you can't pay a therapist $375 for an hour their rate, what does that say to you about you? And I've seen coaches who are money mindset coaches do that specifically, Shameless Squad. No lie. So I'm like, you have a blockage there because obviously you aren't practicing what you're preaching. So there's hypocrisy in a lot of this that I'm seeing. And this is why I'm sharing this info, because I'm so sick of it. And I don't want any of you to get taken advantage of and coaches like steal your dollars and make promises they can't keep, and it not actually working or potentially helping with this in particular. Because coaches a lot of times who've been in therapy, then they read one book and apply that one theory, and the tools like, wow, I can help everybody. I can be a coach now. It's like, no, just because you've been to therapy, read one book, does not make you a coach, does not make you a therapist, okay? Go to school, get the degree. And when it comes to coaches who create packages on lived experiences alone, like I'm a relationship coach because I've had toxic relationships, I've had unhealthy relationships, relationship red flags here, and all of this. That is your lived experience alone. And when you get into relationships, you get into trauma. And when you get into trauma, you get into therapy. And so you can't just be like, I've been through so much in my life and my relationships, so now I want to, like, no, that doesn't make sense. And it's one of the things where rather than working in the helping industry and field, that person and coach is only basing things off of lived and heard experiences. And then there can be countertransference and transference, which psychology teaches a lot about, and they do not talk about that in coaching. And this could also be coming in with countertransference and projection of that coach then talking about their experiences and putting that on the client, and then that client feeling like they're the coach and having to listen and hold space when that's not their job. They're paying you for a service, and I've seen that happen too. Coaches who also have a mental health diagnosis in the title of their coaching style is something related to trauma, anxiety, no formal training in their coaching is a wannabe therapist. And if they haven't had 2 years at least working within that modality, and I would say in the therapy field more than anything else, like no. So trauma coaching, grief and loss coaching, post getting rid of a baby coaching, healing from narcissistic abuse and parents coaching, ADHD coaching is the one that I will say, with the exception if that person is a trained therapist, but a lot more of those diagnoses really are helpful with therapy. It's more therapy. And other things to really watch out for is if they have a large social media following, if they share stories of their clients, because meaning there's probably not a lot of confidentiality with that. Have you ever noticed certain fields and industries are like, oh, I did this with my client today. I shared this with my client today. Therapist, have you ever seen a therapist do that? I did this with my client today and shared all these intimate details. Therapists don't really do that, okay? And when it comes to this in particular, coaches that do have confidentiality clauses, but then they out themselves on social media or share stories or different things without that client's consent, that is key. And because coaches are not trained in HIPAA, and a lot of therapists are trained in HIPAA, right? That is something big where they don't take confidentiality as seriously. And this is why I say be careful who you share your care with. And a lot of times coaches on social media give misinformation regarding specific questions that relate to research done in the therapy field. And I've also seen this too. I've seen this a lot where it's like coaches nowadays are like, therapy doesn't work, blah, 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 blah. And some of those coaches who I've seen say that, I've literally recommended to them, well, don't use your insurance. You're probably not going to get the best therapist to hold space for you. You're probably going to get somebody potentially who is burnt out, tired, saw 8 to 13 clients in a day, and they're working to the bone here, and you get what you pay for here. And so many people, so many friends, so many family members, so many clients, not clients, just people, clients as in like people that want to go to therapy have literally asked me this, Shameless Squad. And I'm like, these are my recommendations. And if you're not going to take them seriously, then you're not going to take your mental health seriously at the end of the day, is really what I see with a lot of people. It's like, I'm not wasting my breath to help you here. I'm giving you the roadmap. I'm giving you the information. I'm telling why private pay is better. And there's more confidentiality. And then every single time, I'm not even kidding you, people come back and they bitch and complain to me about how, oh yeah, my therapist isn't a great fit, blah, 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 or they're unprofessional, or they seem like they're not there with me, or they're drowned out, or they're not listening, or they're not this, or they're not that. Exactly what I tried to warn you about. You get what you paid for. Insurance-based therapy, you're getting like McDonald's of therapy, right? Private pay therapy, you're getting like Rolls-Royce therapy, and you're going to be feeling like Rolls-Royce when you invest in that. Because if you're using your insurance, are you really invested in therapy that much? No, probably not. And then people don't end up going back to actually try to pay out of pocket, to actually be invested, to actually show up with that therapist. And so that's a big one. Coaches who are also speaking about therapy that don't know jack shit and aren't trained in this field are wannabe therapists. They can totally speak on lived experience. However, don't use therapy in your marketing, your content, your testimonials to shame therapists. Like, no. And when it comes to coaches who don't practice from coaching ethics and are clearly breaking them, that's a red flag of a coach here, Shameless Squad. That's a big one that people don't necessarily discuss or talk about in particular. And it's like, well, what is, if they are breaking coaching ethics here, right? What is actually the penalty for that? There's not a lot because it's such an unregulated field. And coaches who have a big social media following but gatekeep information like research, books, and educational tools that can actually help clients, but they don't share out of scarcity, that if they do, they'll find out that their coach hasn't been giving credit where it's due to that creator, to that author, and then that client won't book with them. And so there's so many different things here when it comes to this. Now, yes, I know we all want to help out in the world. I know that people go through shit. I know that life sometimes is hard. And here's the thing though, there is an abundance of clients that need to seek help. Yes. And not everybody always needs to be in coaching or in therapy. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's reasons, seasons, whatever. And I want to say, like, a lot of people will say so many things that are just ridiculous, and they don't want to put in the work of actually applying to grad schools to become a therapist. So they take the easy, quick route to become a coach. And there are even people out there who I've seen in the media who have claimed to be a psychologist but are not. They have no degree. And people who claim to know all these different things, like on relationships, on love, on sexual wellness, but their background is in the field of like law and lawyers. Make it make sense to me, because it doesn't. Okay. And so this is sketchy then, because you could be thinking, oh my God, I'm going to work with a relationship expert. And it's like, no, those lawyers probably saw the shit end of the stick in relationships. And they probably think, yep. I know. It's like, bitch, you don't know shit. Do you know how to treat certain sex therapy symptoms? Do you know what complex trauma and shame is in relationships? Do you actually know different trainings and modalities that can actually help therapeutically with clients? Do you actually know how to treat people and how to help them heal after infidelity and an affair? Do you know about different desire, arousal, all the things? Do you know about andropause? If you don't know these things, like if you are like, I don't even know, like I knew some of them, but you don't know one of those things, like I would not hire you as a coach. And if it's multiple, I would not hire you as a coach. So lived experience is not enough with no research, no trainings, not going to school for this. And this is the thing where therapists go to school for as long as a doctor and a lawyer and any other higher educational degree. But many wannabe therapists are like, let me just shoots and ladder it, like skip past, go jump, and then boom, if I like fall down, and go down the slide, maybe I'm gonna have to restart and do something completely different. And I see so many people in the physical health field and industry, doctors, nurses, PTs, occupational therapists, who are so concerned with like the body, nutritionists and everything like that, that then they do coaching, but then they start talking to their clients about eating disorder symptoms. And it's like, no, that's not your job. You're not a therapist. And the fact that you're going back into that past and that trauma and that timeline and reopening that up with them, and you may not know how to teach them or even recognize if somebody is dissociating or emotionally flooding here. Why would you set yourself up for that? That's literally like a liability that could be waiting to happen here. Stay in your lane. And this is other people too who want to start a podcast, either about their therapy or experiences, or discussing mental health, or interviewing experts as if they're like the hero in this situation when they don't know fucking shit. They're literally listening and learning from the therapy field experts here. However, the people in the therapy field and those so-called experts are literally the same faces and same people. And I'm not going to lie to you, Shameless Squad, I know a lot of people in the therapist community, therapists chime in, are sick of seeing the same people doing the same trainings, doing the same boring CEUs, writing, the same book, recycling all their same content here. And it's just like, we need new blood in this in particular, as well as this is something where it just gets old. And then people think, oh my God, this book is so amazing. It's like, that book was like 10 years ago. And this book doesn't even include all people here. So it's like, no, this book is not that incredible. If it applies to you, then yeah, you're going to think it's incredible, right? Like, for example, it's like, oh, this couples therapy book, but then they don't have anybody like represented in the queer community or LGBTQ plus folks, kinky folks, poly folks. It's just like, this is not that great anymore because we got to get with the times, right? And then there's also people who read different types of like trauma books and they think they know so much about trauma and they're like, yeah, this book, you got to read it, blah, blah, blah. And I've seen like older women have literally said that to me. They're like, you need to read this book. And I'm like, if you only knew what the therapists in the field thought about that book, you don't know jack shit just because you read these books, Shameless Squad. You don't know what these therapists think either. So it's like, why are you just taking certain things as gold, even from therapists too? Because therapists are taught to critically think and also look at, well, are there any, misconceptions? Is there anything within this that doesn't make sense? Is there anything that needs to be challenged? Is there anything that doesn't feel credible? Is there anything that needs to go a little bit deeper here? And so many people, just because you read doesn't mean you're right. Let me say that again. Just because you read doesn't mean you're right. And a lot of people think I can read all these books by therapists or psychologists or whatever, or in the self-help industry, and then they're so amazing. And it's like, that's why a lot of therapists don't have discussions with people about books. That's why a lot of therapists don't talk about this stuff, because it's not actually that great. And they would probably break your heart if they gave you certain answers to certain questions based off of certain books, based off of certain people who are rating those books. And some might still like them. Some may be in between. Some may not have an opinion. And some may be like, this is not it. So there's a lot to really think about. And when it comes to this as well, I just want to make sure I don't forget about things. So like red flags of coaches and wannabe therapists are outing their clients, speaking on the therapy field without the degree and saying whether or not it works or not. That's not for you to say. You can say it from your lived and your own personal experience, but don't use that in your content to then get people to like come and hire you on as a coach. No. And not spending their tens of thousands of dollars that they receive from clients as an investment into their own therapy when there's unprocessed trauma. I've seen so many coaches and met so many coaches out there, Shameless Squad, where it's like, there's so much unprocessed trauma here. And it's just fucking wild that some of these people are coaching out here. And it's like, but they won't go to therapy and they won't do it. And again, that says a lot about that coach if they won't go to therapy for the first time, the second time, the third time, especially if they have multiple friends out there that are therapists. And I said this in one of my videos, in my shorts here. I said, I had an old friend who said to me, I wish therapists were high-level thinkers. And it's like, really? Sure. Like, you have to laugh at it. It's like, really? Like, who the F are you to say that you have less education than these therapists? Your three friends here, you're looking at us as you don't respect us, as if we're dumb, as if we're stupid, as if we're unintellectual. And it's just, what? It was just wild to me. And I'm just like, who the F do you think are higher level thinkers? And why are we even making this a competition, you know? And why is it like you are putting yourself on a pedestal? This person was older than me, and they were a woman, and you can guess the rest, okay? And I've seen so many times that this has happened too. So you really need to be aware of who you share your care with, because coaches are not clinically trained in ethics, or there's not a governing board either. And here's the thing. There's degrees versus credentials. Degrees of counseling and therapy take years to master, okay? Credentials, like a 1-hour training on something, a weekend course on something, a weekend training on something, does not make that person an expert. And just because that person went to therapy for EMDR trauma work and then they went and took a training on that for a weekend, doesn't mean you can just fucking spiritually bypass and then be like, I'm doing trauma coaching now, yay. And like, no, that's not how it works. I would be very careful about that. And another one was coaches don't always invest in consultant here. So this is something to be mindful of. Becoming a therapist is not for the lighthearted. You get so much feedback on your whole self as a person. You may feel mad, frustrated, in tears some days in grad school and training, and wondering whether or not it's worth it. And you will have to go through challenges, but you will still ask to show up for grad school, homework, tests, studying, internships, potentially doing therapy on your own. And the statistic was 80% of couples that are in grad school actually like break up or divorce or whatever. And I was like, damn, that statistic played out for my small grad school cohort. So yeah, cohorts. Yes. What, like, are people like prioritizing their relationships or their marriages over like their education or their future, their personal growth of like what they actually want to do, Shameless Squad. And sometimes you will fail and pass all at the same time when it comes to this therapy field too. And one of the big things as well within the therapy field, so many people just get so excited. And when they have one-on-one sessions with people or they're in training for a master's or a doctorate, they're consuming all this education and information. And then they just want to give it and they want to share it and they want to teach it to other people. Don't become a therapist if you want to be a teacher, right? Unless you are not going to be doing therapy sessions, no deep divey processy shit, your clients are not coming to see you just for psychoeducation alone here. You're in the wrong field, and that's not what therapy is, and that's not what coaching is, and that's not what consulting is. Like, consulting is getting your questions answered. Coaching is potentially coursework and teaching. Everybody does it different here, but it's also like, what's the play, what's the play, what's the play, run the play, run the play, run the play. It's teaching and moving through better habits faster, and therapy is all about the process, and it's all about the past here. And so I've seen so many people as well just get so excited about what they're learning. And then I almost want to be like, oh my God, I can like really talk about this area really, really great because I've studied social psychology for years and I know how to explain. It's like, you don't need to mansplain or womansplain. What's the word for womansplain, by the way? I'm still trying to figure that one out, Shameless Squad. You don't have to womansplain this to a therapist. And I see so many people outside of the therapy field get so interested in psychology. And then when they have therapists as their clients, therapists are just, like, why are you explaining this to me? I don't need to know this. And maybe I do know that. And, I take it with a grain of salt. Maybe there's something to learn from a different perspective, but like, that's not what we were talking about, or that's not what my coaching session was for, or my consultation was for, or whatever, right? And even with that too, there can be a lot of people who really think that they know it all because they have studied certain things for years. And the humble therapist, the humble coach, the humble consultant will always be learning, always be growing, and always be evolving here. And that's really what staying shameless is all about. Myself included, the more I know, the less I know, right? And some people don't like to admit that here specifically. But this is one of those things where a lot of people, when it comes to therapy, they won't go into the field. They will be too lazy to actually apply to grad school, then do 2 years of master's degree or 3 years, depending on full-time, part-time, then be too lazy to take tests, to get licensed, to move forward, to do an unpaid internship, to then get paid shit. So people just spiritually bypass all that work and they're like, I'm going to become a coach and I know everything because I experienced this one bad relationship. So now I'm a relationship coach. Really? No, that's not how it goes. And because of that too, we need to learn to start respecting therapists who are working in the trenches for like $20, $40, $60. And literally, like, some therapists like charge $400 an hour. Some therapists charge $500, $600 out in New York. And I'm in Minnesota as I'm recording this. I've heard also people in California charge $500. And people think that's astronomical and crazy and wild. However, have y'all ever seen Myron on YouTube? I don't remember his last name. He's like, my time is the most precious thing, and I charge $25,000 for an hour of my time because I used to charge $2,500 or $1,500, and then the next day when someone said, oh my gosh, I'll take like 6 hours with you, blah, 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 here you go, consultation fee. He's like, now my rate is $25,000. And so sometimes it's like people aren't ready to pay these high ticket prices or really invest either. And that's one of the things, like, no one will ever be ready. No one will ever be ready to actually change, move forward, grow, learn on a therapeutic level, on a consulting level, or on a coaching level. However, the ones that do and will know that they are going to be doing the best thing for their personal growth and their wellness at the end of the day, Shameless Squad. So this is a lot to consider. And when you see people working at Amazon that literally make more money than a therapist as a higher paying degree, people see that or know that and they're like, I don't want to do that now. And people also think therapy is just about advice giving. That couldn't be further from the truth. That's more consulting with feedback here specifically. And therapists make the best consultants because therapists actually have the skills to work with people on the deep divey level the most, but then also integrate change and give you the feedback of the steps of what you need to do here. It's just whether or not you will actually hire that on here. Okay. So you might wonder, is it all worth it? There's no doubt that some therapists, all really, I think, need to be paid more. And this is one of the things where I was watching Love is Blind recently, and one of the guys on there said, yeah, teachers and nurses need to be paid more. And I thought, what about therapists? Okay. Like, the hidden heroes during COVID 2020 pandemic that helped people in therapy were the people that were helping doctors, nurses, divorce lawyers, teachers were therapists. They were literally the backbone and still have been to this day, 5 years later, as I'm recording this, trying to help people heal, trying to help people survive and thrive in 2025. What about them? What about therapists? And how much acknowledgement do they actually get? You see nurses get discounts. You see doctors get discounts. You see teachers get discounts. And literally, shameless God, what about therapists, right? What about the people with those credentials, or even if they're former therapists? And I was at a store one time and they said that too. They were like, oh yeah, nurses, teachers, doctors get discounts. And I was like, what about therapists? And this person was like, oh, yeah, that's actually a really great point here. And maybe it's because therapy is getting talked about more and more and more. But this person was like, I will give you that same discount, right? Like, I have no argument about that. I don't know how you would argue no not to give a therapist a discount on something, and sure as shit, got it, right? But I'm like, why does nobody think about us? Why does nobody care about therapists as much? And that's the thing. When you have those friends who are trained therapists, people typically don't always ask them how they're doing. They're always getting potentially, I don't want to say always, right? I'll check myself with my all or nothing thinking there and my dualistic energy. But they are also the ones who truly also need to be checked in on the most too, because they're going through a lot, experiencing a lot. And this is a lot when it comes to all the stuff that I'm discussing here. But who thinks about therapists? Who gives back to therapists? There's no board protecting them like teachers. There's legit, there was every therapist get a free cup of coffee at Starbucks during COVID. I went and I got that free cup of coffee, and I know how people feel about Starbucks, right? However, they at least did something to acknowledge the mental health crisis and the workers, therapists, listening and helping people heal through all this emotional chaos and trauma and these times here. And therapists have learned, and heard experience, but people don't speak up about this as much because they're afraid that the licensing board is going to come after them, or even if they're not a HIPAA compliant entity, meaning they're private pay, like confidential information is different then. And there's also different therapy names, for instance, that Instagram account, but she was anonymous because she was worried that she would have gotten in trouble, right? And then you also got like Lori Gottlieb, like maybe you should talk to somebody, but then you see supervisors and other therapists shaming her because she's talking about client sessions, but she's not giving out their names, their diagnoses, their address, their date of birth. That's HIPAA information, okay? And that's different. And she got scrutinized because of even being a therapist and having this book out there. And my guess is she didn't write those things in her book. I still haven't read it or anything, Shameless Squad, but there's a lot to really think about with shame in and outside of the therapy field, even when someone writes a book and creates funny memes accounts. And here's my shameless feedback. If you are finding yourself being a wannabe therapist, or you're seeing people who are being a wannabe therapist, go back to school, get your degree, get your license, being a mental health advocate and speaking on your lived experience is not enough alone here. And how about you start hiring therapists in your companies, your corporate settings, communities to speak about wellness, psychology, personal growth, and different things that can actually help people heal. And how do we actually pay therapists a decent wage? If celebrities are getting paid 100 figures, therapists need to be getting paid 7-8 figures for speaking at gigs alone. Just saying, because they have the education and the knowledge here, and student loans they got to pay off too, probably. And if not, I love that for you. Congratulations. I want to be you. I want to be you, therapist. I want to be that therapist. Okay. Anyway, but there's a lot to really consider, and you really need to learn therapist ethics. If you are going to be a business coach, or you're going to be a coach that works with therapists, I've seen so many business coaches that are like, yeah, I help people that help serve others and have service-based businesses like therapists. And I'm like, well, do you know their ethics? And then they don't. And it's like, well, then the way you coach is not going to apply for them. Therapists can't use testimonials. And it's just like, seriously, stop. So hire a therapist as a consultant as well when it comes to businesses too, and coaching, as well as dealing with issues that scream mental health rather than therapy. And also tell clients, if you're a wannabe therapist, that you can't work with them, especially until they go to therapy. And this is outside of your scope of practice. People have also said to me, like, yeah, I really want to, send somebody to you when I was practicing sex therapy, but they're not ready for that yet. But they're coming to you as a coach. They're not ready for anything yet, but they're still doing it. So who are you to say if this client is ready or not, unless they said that to you? However, you need to challenge them on that, coaches, and you need to challenge them on there's deeper blockages therapeutically that they're not ready to work on. And that's one of the things where it's like, you might need therapy first, and you probably do. Otherwise, you are probably doing some things that are shady, unethical, and a slippery slope, coaches out there too. So if you're doing anything that's processy, that's therapy, coaches, okay? If you're doing any type of coaching and there's not a game plan, that's therapy. If you're doing coaching that relates to a mental health topic and you found yourself with a wannabe therapist or being a wannabe therapist, that's therapy. Run. So these are different types of scenarios. And I really want to say, go to school, learn, listen, get the degrees, and then decide if you actually want to be a therapist after you just jump through all the hoops, or if you just want to be, right? Makes me think of Spice Girls. But Shameless Squad, beware of different people who are out there, celebrities that speak about the mind and the body, and have different books out there, who are in the physical health field or are in a field that is not related to health and wellness here, or are just like become a coach in one weekend, or legit are coaching, but they have no degree, and their degree could be in like photography in undergrad or like marketing in undergrad or whatever. And they haven't actually done any coaching programs to actually help them spiritually, or they don't have any credentials or licenses here, or the degree at a mastery level here. Different people who are doing talk shows and saying this is therapy, but it's not. Different people who are just speaking on the self-help and wellness and industry here, or just even celebrity podcasts where they talk about all these different deep divey therapy topics, but they don't actually have therapists on. And the ones that do, pay attention to their body cues and how they show up, because they literally expose themselves in their conversation. And it's kind of like they get more information than anything else, rather than actually doing the work. Okay, Shameless Squad. So this is a long video. I'm tired. I had a note from January, March, and November here, all about how to spot wannabe therapists, the red flags, and don't let them steal your money this next year. Don't. And if you've been screwed over by a wannabe therapist and you're just like, and they're a coach or a consultant, you're like, I just can't do this. I want to get my money back, or I just want to share this information. I just don't want anybody else to get screwed over by this person. Always feel free to reach out to me, stayshameless.com, hop on my newsletter, email me. So just that way I can know too, and also forewarn people of this information as well here. But Shameless Squad, this was a long one. Definitely, if you got to the end, drop a heart in the comments below. I was really scared to do this video and be vulnerable with all of you. I know I'm shamelessly sassy here specifically, but give your girl some love and, share what therapists out there have you actually learned from. And therapists, if you are watching this, chime in. This is a space for you, a video for you, a platform for you. Share your website, share your shameless plugs, share the things that you do, share any offerings that you have here, okay? Because I trust you over different coaches without a master's, a counseling degree, or doctorate degree, over the ones that don't, okay? So Shameless Squad, make sure to like, subscribe, hype this video, share this with a friend too. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Stay shameless, yo. And I want to give a shout out to Sticks and Bones podcast, because the two baddies on that podcast literally are amazing, and they talk a lot about Greek mythology and all these myths and all these mishaps and all these things. And I've been watching their content for the last couple weeks. I don't know if I would have been able to do this video finally in 2025 when I had notes in January, March, and November this year, until I listened to them. And one of them talks about, I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting the name here. One of them really discusses and talks about Since when did we get to this point in life where we are trusting random people rather than people with the degrees, the credentials, or who've studied or been in that area or field? So just some food for thought there, Shameless Squad. I love you. Like, subscribe, hype, share with a friend. And as always, watch out for those wannabe therapists out there. Don't let them steal your money in 2026 or any other year after that, honey. I love you. Stay shameless.